let you take a look at that. Somebody else is going to testify here a little bit more in depth about the current Indiana laws. So I'm going to go past that one. The next page also shows some other Indiana laws that deal with marijuana, but that aren't necessarily about the amounts in possession. My favorite one is the Indiana marijuana tax stamp law, which says that people who possess marijuana are legally required to purchase and affix a state-issued tax stamp onto his or her contraband. Now, actually, I called over there one time to find out, excuse me, can I buy a tax stamp for $10 worth? And literally nobody had a clue what I was talking about. So I think that maybe we should do something with that. I do advocate doing something with the marijuana tax stamp. Another category of interest that we have on marijuana has to do with industrial hemp laws. And some states have what they call industrial hemp laws. You are allowed to grow industrial hemp, and that is defined by a percentage of THC in the plant. So industrial hemp in some states is 0.3% or less. West Virginia uses a little stricter standard. And I recently heard a story from one of the industrial hemp users who makes a product here in Indiana that's sort of like a concrete block. It's a building material. And they use as filler in this block hemp fiber because it makes it lighter. They have to import their hemp fiber from out of state because nobody in Indiana is allowed to grow it. So they were complaining about that. And there is a wide variety. I'm not sure if we have anybody here today from the industrial hemp people. We were supposed to, but I don't know if they came. Various states have authorized studies of the hemp industry. A lot of times the studies never got done. Typically the state questions regarding this have to do with how do you categorize it, and how are we going to license producers, and are they going to be allowed to market it? So there's a whole variety of issues having to do with industrial production. Probably the most publicized question about marijuana is its use for medicinal purposes. In 1996, California became the first. Since then, there have been 15 more states plus the District of Columbia that have somehow authorized the use of medical marijuana. We will have people here to testify about this. Medical marijuana seems to be one of the most studied items in the literature of medical issues. In the past 40 years, there have been like 17,000 studies done on medical marijuana. Interestingly, and I do want you guys to note this, some states allow for medical marijuana and allow you to have marijuana in your possession if it's been recommended by a doctor. Now, because it's on the federal, what is it, Class 1, Schedule 1, thank you, it's not officially allowed to be prescribed, but it can be recommended. And in some states, recommendation by a doctor is a defense to possession. In other states, the medical marijuana industry has provided a whole distribution system but I find it very interesting that some states say, well, you can have it, but we're not going to condone the sale. Well, I don't know where you're going to get it, but we're not going to condone the sale. Other states set up a whole system of distribution. And actually, maybe I shouldn't say this over the public media, but it kind of reminds me of the way prostitution laws used to be. You know, it was legal to buy it, but it was not legal to sell it. So that's the way it is in still a number of states. So I think that we're going to have a lot of testimony here from people who are doctors and from people who are patients. Some of you heard Representative Tom Nolman's testimony last year. It was very powerful. And finally, I do want to make a little note about the federal laws. It is a Schedule I substance. All Schedule I substances are considered to be not medically useful. The literature and the studies dispute that significantly. In 2009, the Obama administration sent a memo to federal prosecutors encouraging them not to prosecute people who distribute marijuana under a state law that provides for medical marijuana. However, just this July, the Department of Justice issued a statement that said, we're not going to abide by that, and anybody in violation of the Federal Controlled Substances Act could be prosecuted despite state law. So we don't know where the federal government is on this right now, but mostly I think that the federal laws are more important if you're going to talk about the sale and distribution end. I don't think that the feds go out and actively enforce small possession amounts against individuals. So some of the things that you're going to hear about today are some of the historical issues. Whoops. Maybe I missed a slide. Some of the historical issues having to do with why marijuana became criminalized in the first place. Maybe too bad we do not have a copy of the old movie called Reefer Madness. Couldn't find one, otherwise I'd show it to you. There have been attempts to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level going back as far as President Nixon's administration. Another thing that I think that this group should look at, and as a state legislature we should look at, is our reasons for having marijuana laws. Are we trying to punish people, or are we trying to prevent something? How is marijuana different from alcohol? And I think that you will hear statistics about marijuana use in other states over the last 40 years, and the question of whether this is a gateway drug. Another topic that I think that we need to look at is the number of prosecutions for marijuana possession in Indiana every year and how much it costs us. How much it costs us in terms of prosecution, jail time, and all the rest of the costs that go from the beginning of an arrest to the end of a probationary period. So, Senator Steele, I think I'm going to be done. And we have a lot of people here who are a lot more versed in all of these things than I am. I don't know how to get this off. Okay. So I will sit down and ask you to call some of our witnesses.
Good afternoon, Chairman Steele, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Abrahamson. I'm Director of Legal Affairs for the Drug Policy Alliance.